The European football season has come to a close, and for the first time in 18 years, Arsenal are the Women's Champions League winners. They beat Barcelona, one of the best sides on the planet, 1-0 in the final in Lisbon, courtesy of a Stina Blackstenius goal. Someone who was not only at the final in Portugal, but was part of the side who won Arsenal's last European trophy in 2007 is Lianne Sanderson, and I'm pleased to say she joins us once more on this Sporting Planet. How are you, Lianne?
Hi Natalie, I'm good. I feel like I've literally been on a high for the last 10 days. I haven't really come down from since Arsenal won, but it's been brilliant. Yeah, I'm doing good. Lovely to see you as always.
Lovely to see you too. And I know you were there in Lisbon to witness that historic moment for the team. So what was that like?
I mean, it was amazing, really. I mean, there was a video of me because everyone was taking videos, but I just felt overwhelmed of emotion. Like, in the sense that, like, it was like, I feel like my career came full circle. Like, my manager was in the crowd, Vic Akers, that I won it with. And he found me when I was 9 years old in South East London. So there was a lot of, like, it was like my career was like flashing before my eyes. And I've said it many, many times, but when England won the Euros, I felt pride, I felt emotional based upon the fact that, like, we played against Germany 10 years before that and we got battered in the final of the Euros in Finland. So I felt this element of pride, but I didn't really feel part of it because of, like, England and the FA and how I kind of felt like how they made me feel over the years. Whereas with Arsenal, because they make me feel part of the club, you know, our pictures outside the Emirates alongside the Invincibles, they always keep me around, you know, and whether it be with the men's team, the women's team. So I just felt like this real amount of pride and just like, it was almost like I got closure on my career, as crazy as that sounds, because there's a lot of people still at the club that worked there when I was there. And Gary Lewin, like, he was one of the first people I hugged after the game. And that guy is like a legend. I've known him for years. Like, he's been at that football club even since before I was born. You know, and he still looks the same. So, you know, and it was great to see people like that just, like, love the club. And the fact that Arsenal did it again, and we did it in 2007, and, like, no one thought it was going to be Arsenal, did they? They thought it was going to be Chelsea.
Yeah, very much so. And if it wasn't them, it was going to be Barcelona. Barcelona would easily get past Arsenal in that final. But just something to pick up on, which I am really intrigued about, where you talk about how Arsenal as a club cherish, it seems, all of you who have played a part, whether it's the men's or the women's team. How unique is that?
Yeah, I mean, it is unique because I played for Chelsea for a year and a half and no one would ever really know that. You know, it's not because I feel like, oh, you know, I'm upset that they never kind of reach out or anything, but they don't. And that's the reality. But I'm also fine with that because I spent 15 years at Arsenal and that's what people think of me, Lianne and Arsenal, the women's team. Obviously, I'm a Man United men's fan. But I think, yeah, the club do a fantastic job. I think this dates back to, like, even David Dean after the game. He was at the after party with Vic Akers, like Luis Enrique was there, Mickey Thomas was there. Like, the club, like the men's club just loved the women's team. And I think we used to have this banter every single time. You know, when the men would take their, like, Premier League stickers at the beginning of the season and we'd take a picture and all our trophies would be at the front. And the men, you know, we never got an open bus parade unless the men won the double. So in 1998 and 2004 was when we got to go around Islington, got the freedom of the borough. It was brilliant. But I think the club have always done a really good job. When David Dean and Vic Akers founded the club in 1987, they've always done a really good job at, like, bridging that gap because Vic worked for the men's team as a kit manager. So he'd bring, like, you know, Thierry Henry to the games, Pires, Will Todd, they would come and watch us, Nicholas Anelka, and we were buzzing. Like, imagine when we were younger, like, I was just like 14 playing in the first team and I've got, like, Thierry Henry watching me play, or I could go and watch him train at the training ground and I'd clean, like, Mark Overmars' boots. And it was just like, they treated us like, I feel like I was being treated like a young YTS boy, you know, like, they would do all those things and I loved it. Like, part of me felt like Vic was trying to change me into a gooner and he used to always try to, but at the same time, like, it's just great. I mean, like I said, the fact they have our picture alongside the Invincibles, and when the girls lifted the trophy last week at the parade, that was in the background. Like, I just have a really immense, like, amount of pride, and I think the club do a really, like, they always say to me, we don't get it always right. No one ever does. But at the same time, like, they get it, to me, like, 99.9% right most of the time. They invited us for lunch last week, the week leading into the final. We went and had lunch with the players, you know, at the training ground. And, like, it was just great, really.
Yeah, the real pioneers, it feels, with the women's side of the game. Let's talk about how Arsenal did it then on the day in Lisbon, because I think the last time we spoke, when we were looking ahead to this, I think most people thought Barcelona, as my dog appears as usual on the podcast, most people thought Barcelona would get the job done. So how did Arsenal do this?
I mean, let's be honest. Like, Arsenal are the champions of Europe, but Barcelona is still the best team in the world. Like, they're my favourite team to watch. They're incredible, and I think they've kind of got forgotten about since Arsenal won it. So I want to give them their accolades, because people keep saying, oh, you know, they didn't play well on the day. Like, they completely dominated possession. Arsenal defended. It was a defensive masterclass from Leah Williamson, Steph Catley. The whole back five were incredible. And I think Barcelona haven't really played against Arsenal. So it was almost like against Chelsea, people can say, oh, you know, Chelsea got beat. How does that even work? Chelsea got beat 8-2 on aggregate over 2 legs. They win their 6th consecutive WSL title. And then Arsenal, it's a final. Anything can happen. So for me, defensively, Arsenal were unbelievable. There was no attack. Like, Alessia Russo was getting no service. But Tony Duggan did say to me during the game, because I was getting all nervous, and she said to me, don't worry, they're going to win this. And I'm thinking, what's she seeing? Because I just couldn't see it. Because we just couldn't get the ball. We were chasing and defending. But there was moments in the game. There was a tackle that Caitlin Ford did in the first half, which got everybody kind of going. Then there was like Daphne Domsalar made some really good saves. So there were certain turning points. But Renee Segers bringing on Beth Mead and Stina Blackstenius in that moment. But also, if this was a year ago, I think Alessia Russo would have been a player that came off. You understand about that's how we managed the Arsenal team, like for like. Whereas Renee left all the attackers on, brought Beth Mead on, everybody was on, and it was just brilliant. And Beth's assist, I think, has gone under the radar a little bit because it was a brilliant ball, made it look simple. But the ball from Marina Caldente as well to Beth Mead was also brilliant, because she makes football look easy. So I think, you know, Arsenal held on for dear life in the end, but absolutely 100% deserved it. And again, I felt for Barcelona at the end of the game, but like, it was just unbelievable. Like, I don't think any of the players, when we interviewed Stina Blackstenius after the game, I know she doesn't like that, similar to Kim Little, doesn't really like interviews and stuff, but like, you could just tell she was just so shocked. Like, I'm sure they believed they could win, because they've done it against Real Madrid, they've done it against Lyon, where they've like come from behind in the second leg, whereas this was one game. And Bonmati had a chance in the first 2 minutes where she cut it inside, and I was thinking, oh, here we go, waiting for the net to ripple. You know, the game will be over in the first 20 minutes, Barcelona, and then there was this tackle, and you just think, yes, like, they've got this.
Interesting when you mentioned that the tactics then from Renee Slagers with, as you say, keeping Alessia Russo on the pitch as well. How much credit does she deserve, and how much more success do you think she can bring to Arsenal?
Oh, she's just amazing. Like, I can't even speak highly enough of her. I think I said it on the show before. Like, she was actually at the Arsenal Academy when I was in the first team. I think we're a similar age by about a year. And like, I think she just gets it. And from what the players say, I mean, when someone's managing you and you're doing well, you're never going to say, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. But I think what I see is like a facilitator that doesn't overcoach, and is a good person, is a good communicator, is fair. And I think that's what's been missing from the women's game for a long time, where, you know, there's this whole, you can tell when someone swallowed the coaching manual. And as players, you don't want that. You just need someone to kind of tell you, be honest, why you're not playing or what you're doing well. But at the same time, I think Renee, the players like her. And I think she's, from what I've gathered and from what the players have said in interviews and from what they've told me, she's just composed, calm, you know, she's not a shouter. But the players say she's fair, and you can see that. Vic was like that with us. You know, we had the best players. We didn't need someone to tactically do all this and that and the other and XG and all that type of stuff. It's like, what do I need to do to be at my absolute best? And I think Renee does that in an incredible way. And, you know, she lost her voice after the game at the parade. Like, I mean, what a turnaround. Like, beginning of the season, they got battered by Bayern Munich, lose to Real Madrid, and then now they're in the final, like, and then win. Like, what?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, miraculous. It's fabulous. But when you think about, like you've mentioned, all the things, the comebacks, the stories behind it all, you know, giving the opportunity for Chloe Kelly to come on loan like she did as well, giving people that opportunity within that team. What more can come from Arsenal? What does winning the Champions League mean for them going forward, do you think?
I think world football will them, like individual players, I still think Arsenal need more. I think there's been some unbelievable standout performances. Katie McCabe, Caitlin Ford, Steph Catley, Emily Fox. I think there's certain players that people think of Arsenal, right? They think of Kim Little, Leah Williamson, Alessia Russo, who were incredible. But I think for this tournament, against Lyon, against Barcelona, there's been some players that I think are getting the accolades they deserve because they've been incredible. I think Marina Caldente coming over from Barcelona was massive. World class for me. I think we've got great players at Arsenal, but I only really put Marina Caldente and Alessia Russo eventually in that category. But I think Arsenal can recruit now. I think other players will want to come as well. I still think they need to strengthen in certain areas because overall they've not won other competitions. They've won the WSL, FA Cup, those types of things. So this doesn't automatically mean now Arsenal are going to win the WSL because they've won the Champions League. But I think it makes other people think, actually, I might want to go and play for Arsenal. Because they've always had Paul. It's Arsenal. But I think they haven't really historically won in recent years. And I think what was happening, we were always ahead of the game. Then Chelsea and Man City had that investment. And Arsenal kind of rested on their laurels. And then City and Chelsea kind of went like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, and then Arsenal kind of got left behind when it come to players, and Emma Hayes went to Chelsea, and then the rest is history.
Yes, certainly. Talking of Chelsea, we know that they won the domestic treble this year, but seeing what Arsenal have done, does it make the Champions League, do you think, even more important for them next season, as it's still a trophy they've not won?
I know, if I was a Chelsea player, I've said it, like, I'd feel quite sick. Like, I'd find that quite hard. I would, because that has been the, like, outside noise common theme, isn't it? The next team to do it after we did it, it was going to be Chelsea every single year. Can they do the quadruple? And they still have had a successful season. But if I was a Chelsea player, I think the pressure will be on Sonia Bonpastor. I said, like, if this was next year, as crazy as it sounds, because no one really wants to give the domestic treble any type of credit, which it has to be given credit, because, you know, just because they didn't win the Champions League doesn't mean it's been a disastrous season. Come on now, like, the treble is unbelievable. The WSL is getting harder every single year to do it, and they've done it 6 years in a row. You know, 9 out of the last 11. So they are an incredible team, but I think, you know, with Alexis Ohanian, Serena Williams coming in, Sonia Bonpastor, like, only person to ever do it as a player and a manager, win the Champions League. Like, you know, there's a lot of pressure there. We're bringing in Naomi Girma, Kira Walsh, you know, those types of things I think bring pressure. But I hope that if Chelsea were to win it next year, it doesn't mean because Arsenal have won it that should be discredited. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the Champions League. But I do think, like, if I was a Chelsea player, I'd be thinking, I'd be a bit gutted. Like, because that is the one trophy that everyone talks about. Like, Kira Walsh and Lucy Bronze didn't come back to Chelsea to win the WSL. They've come back because they want to be part of the team that will win Champions League. Yeah,
very much so. And just quickly on that investment from Alex Ohanian, was it 20 million? Is that what he's going to put into the club? Which maybe some, you know, certain football fans won't be aware how much 20 million means to the women's game when you compare it to the men's game, Lianne.
Yeah, it's massive. And I like Alexis because he did really good stuff with Angel City in America as well. And he was one of the first investors. He really cares about women's sports. And he always says that. And he said even before Olympia, his little girl came along, like, he always believed that women's sports was the way to go. And he was massive at Angel City. So I think the visibility of Alexis and Serena is massive. Because similar to Michelle Kang, like, he doesn't just go because, I want to be pictured. He actually cares, and I think that's something that will make a massive difference. And he will invest, like, it's a 10% stake as well for 20 mil. Like, that's unbelievable. But I do think, you know, Chelsea don't need encouraging to attract players. But I think the investment, like, from them, I love it. I love seeing them at the FA Cup final. I love the fact that Fallon Torres-Joyce met her hero, Serena. I'm sure she was gutted after losing the final. But Serena Williams is in your dressing room after, like, one icon, one of the greatest ever sports people, male or female, ever. And the fact that she's part of this investment at Chelsea, I love it.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions on Arsenal then, or the wider picture as well. Because I do want to also ask you about the Victory Parade, because you were part of it, co-hosting it. So we've got to talk about that. But just in terms of, I mean, I remember going back to when the Lionesses won the Euros, and I mean, I was emotional after that, just thinking about what this means for the game going forward. Likewise, I have no affinity with Arsenal women, but again, I got really emotional about it because I just thought more about the encouragement for young girls and how this is just going to hopefully pave the way once more. Do you think this can act, again, as another inspiration?
100%. I mean, even just when I was at the parade, like, seeing the little, like, girls with their dads, you know, it was like fever pitch when Arsenal won it back in the day, and it felt like there was people outside, you know, on their balconies. Some lady was doing her gardening and said to me, the girls got a parade today. Like, it was just a really joyous occasion, similar to the final at Wembley when the girls won it, you know, and all the games that they had along the way. It was like such a joyous occasion. Now I think there's more pressure in the women's game, which will come with success. But I do think, you know, overall, everyone knew our Arsenal. They always associate Arsenal Football Club with our success. They still think, a lot of people that don't watch women's football still think we are the best team because we used to be. Chelsea are the best team now. But I think it's a bigger picture here. Like, Chelsea struggled to sell out Stamford Bridge. They struggle to bring in a big crowd, but it's because the groundwork has been done from Arsenal for so many years. But I do think, Arsenal can't do any more. The fans can't do any more. But I do think globally for women's football, England, like, we are a force to be reckoned with. Since the Lionesses won the Euros, like America, we struggled to beat them when I was playing. Germany, we struggled to beat them. Now these other nations are thinking, actually, the Lionesses, like, they've got good players. Do you know what I mean? But I still think, teams like Spain, for me, are the favourites. And at the Euros, the Lionesses, like, it's a difficult group. But I do think, and they're playing Spain. I said, I'd rather not play against Spain now. Because if I was Bon Mati, I'd be coming for revenge ASAP.
But then again, when you consider what some of those Lionesses did within the England team and also the Chelsea side as well, winners breed winners, hopefully.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think they can hopefully ride that high. I mean, I said I felt a bit sorry for the players because there's like, they're celebrating. Next minute, they're having to go to play for your country, which is the biggest honour. But you're like, oh, come on. Like, let them have a moment. Like, do they really need to have these Nations League games now? Like, 5 weeks before a Euros starts? Like, I don't come from a place, like, as a player, I wanted to play all the time. I prefer playing than training, right? Reality, every player usually does. You want to have games and all that. But, like, at the same time, like, come on, like, they're just celebrating and they've got to go away. Like, but I did like all the welcome backs a lot of them got as well. I thought that was a nice touch from Australia, USA, and I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, very much so. So come on then, tell us about that parade, what the atmosphere was like, the party, I'm sure was kicking off.
Yeah, to be fair, like, I peaked the day before at the final because I missed my flight back. So I was playing in a charity game that day as well. I made it back for the game because I'd been gutted if I didn't. But, like, it was just like, I just felt so overwhelmed with, like, feeling, and all the players, how they were still standing, I don't know. I said to them, you must be absolutely shattered. And it wasn't just from the alcohol, because people assume, they're drinking for 3 days. Some of them probably were. But it's just that feeling of, like, you haven't really had a moment to think, what have we done? Like, this is amazing. Because you're going from people to people, place to place. And, like, it's not until you get home that you probably think, actually, we did something pretty amazing. Do you know what I mean? But the parade was amazing. Like, I was down there co-hosting, and it was just like the fans and everybody. Some of them have been down there since like 5 o'clock in the morning. And the parade didn't actually, well, it wasn't a parade through the streets, but parade of the trophy. Yeah. They didn't come out the place till about 11:30. So, like, the amount of fans, they said there was 10,000, but I would go closer to like 15, 20, to be honest. And there probably would have been even more had some people they were still in Lisbon. So some people couldn't actually get to it because they didn't actually know it was going to be then. But, like, it was just amazing, like, seeing the players down there, and Katie McCabe was on the mic, and and then afterwards I went into, like, they had like a little area in the stadium for friends and family and, like, people that were invited, and it was quite nice because Kim Little had written a speech. Kim doesn't like talking, and, like, Kate was trying to get her to talk in front of the fans, and, like, she wrote something down and kind of just read it, which was quite nice because, not speaking doesn't come natural for everybody. Some people are more introvert, and Kim's one of those people. But I thought it was a nice touch that she, spoke to the group, and, like, Renee also thanked, like, people's families because everyone's families were there, and the support, and that's what kind of people don't realise. You're not just, when you're a footballer and you win, you lose, your family are there and your friends are there and they're with you every step of the way.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds really special. Let's switch to the men's final if we can. PSG dismantled Inter Milan, didn't they, in the to win the Champions League. 5-0 that final scoreline. What did you make of that performance by Luis Enrique's side?
I mean, what a story, Luis Enrique. I've seen loads of the tifos and of his little daughter, and it was so emotional. I think everybody kind of could feel it. But I think when you look at it from the game perspective, I was really shocked. Because I think Inter are one of those teams that goes under the radar. Mkhitaryan's in that team, so I always keep an eye out. Any ex-Man United players that are playing on certain teams, I'm always looking for them. But I thought no one expected Inter to really get to the final, did they, throughout the season? And they've done it. The last 3 seasons, they've got to the last 2. So it's like they're a top side. But I think PSG, like, what I like about this story is that when Messi, Neymar and Mbappe went to PSG, everybody kept saying, they're going to win the Champions League, going to do this, going to do that. And it doesn't always work like that. It sounds cliche, but the best players don't always make the best team. You have to have the chemistry and dynamic. And I think that's something that Nasser, the owner, has realised as well. Because he invested a lot of money in that team. And I thought it was a nice touch that one of the first people we spoke to was Thiago Silva. He FaceTimed him with a trophy, which I thought was quite a nice touch because it has been a journey. But for players like Marquinhos, that's been at the club for a long time, to then win it, Dembele I thought was brilliant, Vitinha, like some unbelievable stories in this team. And when I saw the story of Vitinha being was it Wolves, I was thinking, what?
Yeah.
Like, you see the same, you think, oh, it must be someone with the same name. And you think, wow, like it doesn't always mean, because it's like some people might not see what another manager sees. But I thought PSG were amazing, and like, Kvaratskhelia, like all of those players, I thought they were exceptional. But no one saw that 5-0 coming at all. I mean, the game was already over in the first 20 minutes. And I think they deserved it overall. I think Arsenal, part of them will probably feel a bit gutted because they beat them way back in October. But we're looking at a different PSG side than then. It's completely different.
Really different. Because there was a period where it looked like they might even go out in that league phase.
Yeah.
So I mean, a massive turnaround in 2025 alone for them to have got to where they've got to. And you mentioned the stars of Messi and Mbappe and Neymar that they've tried and tested before. Do you think we're sort of coming to a time or an era where the luxury player is no longer important to teams?
I mean, I still think it is, because I think when you look at players like Harry Kane, he's gone over to Bayern Munich and he's been banging in goals. Finally got his trophy he deserves. But I think you look at Mbappe, like he goes to Real Madrid and then they don't win. And there's this whole thing about, he's the curse. I don't believe that. I love Mbappe. He's one of the best players in the world. He's one of my favourite players to watch. But I think football's changed, Natalie, anyway. I think the tactical side of football, fullbacks now might as well be attackers. They're centre forwards, more or less, the wing backs. And gone are the days where it's like a Gary Neville, who I loved Gary Neville. But those types of fullbacks don't really exist anymore, do they? Then you're looking at like the defensive midfielders, the role has changed, the Makelele role and like N'Golo Kante role. That's kind of changed now, hasn't it? You don't really see that. Where are the number 9s? That's why Victor Osimhen and Isak are like the number 2 that are being linked constantly everywhere. Because back in my day, and I'm only 37 years old, you could reel off Shearer, Van Nistelrooy, Anelka. The list could go on. Whereas now you're looking at it, you're thinking, where has that position gone? I think Pep and those types of coaches changed the game for the better, but I think long term, the number 10 role, we don't really see many number 10s anymore. Like, football's changed. So I still think you need individual quality, but as we saw with PSG, if you know your role and responsibility and you can all implement what you're being asked of, it can be quite powerful. Look at Nottingham Forest this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's also key, I think, with a lot of players these days is versatility, playing a number of different roles. That's probably going to grow and grow as more as the game continues to develop as well. Not only did they try and test some of those players, they've also had managers before like Carlo Ancelotti, Thomas Tuchel, Unai Emery, all of them not able to bring European success to PSG. So where should we be rating Luis Enrique now?
I mean, I think the highest of the high, really. I think as well, though, Natalie, like taking nothing away from Luis Enrique, I like him. When I met him before years ago, because Barcelona were training at St George's Park when we were training there with England, and it was nice to have like conversations with him. But I think the fact that he's like a former player that also has gone on to be successful as a coach, because remember there's this whole thing, former players don't go on to be top coaches. Like, well, Pep Guardiola was a decent player and he's also gone on to be one of the greatest. So I don't know where that really comes from. But I think, we have to rate him on the highest of the high. Like, I mean, I also think you have the combination of players that buy into your game plan. Because, again, not to bring it back to Forest again, but Nuno Espirito Santo, like at Tottenham, didn't really get the chance. Emery at Arsenal didn't really get given a chance. And if you're asking who is a better manager of Emery and Arteta, I think you've got to go Emery. Because of how successful he's been. At Villarreal, Sevilla, in Europe, and at Aston Villa as well. Like, so it has to be a combination of the right manager and coach in combination with the players, because I don't think you can have one without the other. Just ask Ruben Amorim.
You're quite. Yeah. I don't know if we want to get started on that, but we might come to Manchester United in just a bit, just a little snippet of Manchester United.
Sorry, my connection's gone.
I'm sure we can get it working again. But Italian teams, Lianne, they're often hailed as defensive solidity. That's part of their tactics. Inter's backline in Munich just seemed to lack all sort of composure and discipline. Their starting 11 is the third oldest ever in a final in the competition's history. If you remember what the legendary Liverpool defender Alan Hansen once said, you can't win anything with kids. I'm sure he regrets that remark. Do you think age could well have been a factor as well as to why Inter couldn't keep up with PSG?
Yes and no, really. I just think they fell by the wayside. I think Bastoni and Acerbi has been brilliant. They've been brilliant this season. But Martinez was carrying that injury in the semi-final and he played. And I think, I just think PSG had more quality. But then again, I think from playing in Italy myself at Juventus, I went over there with this like misconception that I just come back from my injury. Let me go and see how I get on, because it's a slower league, most intense place I've ever been to in my life. Juventus was incredible, and I was speaking to Patrice Evra about this a few months ago, and I said to him like, it's so intense in Italy, like the fans, the training methods, like you don't really get a day off. And I think there's this misconception that like Italian football's slow, and I didn't feel that when I was over there. Like I honestly, and I've played in America, which was like, the fitness testing and all that in America is pretty intense. But I felt like in Italy, the testing, the fitness levels, the training was the most intense environment I've ever been in. But I want to give credit to Scott McTominay at Napoli as well. I think what a story that is. Billy Gilmore, Scott McTominay again. It goes to show you like, don't work out in one team. I still wanted Scott McTominay to stay at Man United. I just think like, are you really bringing in someone else better than him? I'm not saying he should be the best player in the world, but look at what's happened with him, and fair play to him. He's loving life. He's been treated like he's Ronaldo, and fair play to him.
Yeah, and he was voted the Serie A Player of the Season as well. It's such an impact he's made in such a short space of time. Like I say, we will come on to Manchester United. I just want to round up what's happened in Munich with PSG. And I mentioned it earlier on, winners breed winners, it always feels. Now, do you think they've got that first Champions League trophy? This is such a young PSG side. Do you think they can go on and be dominant in Europe for years to come?
Well, I think so. I mean, you look at players like Doué, Barcola, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele. Yes, definitely. But I still think the Champions League is such a difficult competition to win. I think, teams like Arsenal, like if they had everyone fit and healthy, I do think they could match PSG when it comes to individuality, tactical side of it, possession-based teams. I don't think historically you really see teams, apart from when it was Barcelona, win consecutive Champions Leagues. So I think PSG deserve this. I think now people, it's almost like that weight off their shoulders, isn't it? Because everyone was talking about this for years. PSG, they haven't won anything. They only win that. They talk about it being a farmers league, which I think is disrespectful. In France, it's like, look at their fans. The ultras are crazy. They demand a lot. And I think they can go on to be dominant, but I don't think it necessarily means they're going to win it consecutively year after year. But I do think it's a massive weight off their shoulders. But I think, again, other teams will come back next year. Like, look at Real Madrid. 2 years ago, they were the best team in the world, dominating. Didn't really look like Jude Bellingham was going to get a Ballon d'Or. And now look, Real Madrid don't win the league, and then they don't win the Champions League, and they bring in Mbappe, and everybody expected everything to be wrapped up.
Yeah, a season without a trophy for Real Madrid is quite unthinkable, but that's exactly what happened. Do you know what? When I was watching that Champions League final as well with PSG, it might sound silly to say it because France have always produced great talent. We know that. But I was watching on and thinking, crikey, the France national team, they are just going to be so impressive as these players continue to grow and grow and grow. And that worries me in a way, being an England fan. But still, I mean, do you expect them as well to continue to be dominant on the global stage?
Yeah, I think France are an interesting nation because historically, when I was growing up, they had top players. Zidane, Thierry Henry, Nicolas Anelka, the list could go on. Lilian Thuram. But I think, you look at the young team that they have, definitely. But I think that for some reason, dominance doesn't seem to translate always to national team, does it? Because it also depends, again, who's in charge? What is their tactics? What are they asking of them? Similar to Brazil, the Brazil national team. It's like they're like everyone's second favourite team at a tournament when it's not your own country. And they never seem to perform to the levels we know they can. But I do think the fact that a lot of these players at PSG and on the French team are very young, they're going to be there for a number of cycles for tournaments. So I definitely think now, like, players like Barcola, players like Doué, like, he's put himself on the world stage. Because let's say, I love watching all football, any league, any football, but some people just watch when it's a World Cup, or when it's a Euros, or when it's a Champions League final. And Doué is a player that no one was really talking about beginning of the season.
Yeah, very much so. I think a lot of people were sort of surprised by some of the talent in that PSG set just because of they're young and new to the game as such. But yeah, wow, they were so impressive. Not only did we have the Champions League final, we had the Europa League final, an all Premier League affair. I have to bring up Manchester United in a moment. I'm sorry, Lianne, we can't avoid it. But for Tottenham, they came through to win that. Not the best of finals, has to be said. Does that win paper over the cracks, do you think, for Spurs?
Yeah, but I think any real Tottenham fans, it's interesting because before the final, everybody was saying Ange needs to go. Then they win the final, and it's then all of a sudden you feel a little bit more positivity. But the thing for me that I have a hard time with Ange Postecoglou, fair play to him. You know, fair play, won the trophy, does what he said he's going to do, and I respect that. Second year, he says, I always win in my second year. I think he's quite fortunate he's playing against Man United in that final, because I think if it's Lazio or Fiorentina, I think it's a different game. But fair play to him, credit where it's due. I think where they're at is what happened on the Sunday against Brighton. So if anybody was getting carried away, and it wasn't because it was a hangover from the Europa League, that's where they've been at. And I know they've had injuries. We know Romero, Van der Ven, Vicario was injured, but they still had Son, who isn't at his best at the moment. We know that. Solanke, Bentancur. Like, they still had Kulusevski. At that time, when you look at Tottenham's middle of the season, Archie Gray I thought was brilliant this year. Jed Spence I thought finally got the opportunity, has been brilliant. But, like, they didn't have, like, everyone was injured. Do you know what I mean? I think Ange changed his tactics in the final to a certain degree. Manchester United were poor. And I think, like, for me, I think if Ange does stay, then he'll only have a few games next season, because if they start performing poorly, you know, 5-6 games in, everyone's going to be saying, why it become toxic again? Because against Chelsea, when he's cupping his ear, and then when he can't go over to the fans, you know, that type of stuff. Every single time you see Tottenham play, there's always an altercation with a fan or with Ange or something, and it just become a bit toxic. So I'm happy for him that he won. I'm sure, you know, but he's managing Tottenham. You know, Celtic are a fantastic club, massive football club, but look at the pressure in the Premier League. You know, if you lose a few games, they're like, oh, you should get sacked. But for teams like Man United to be in 16th and 17th with Tottenham, it's just not good enough. Our squad at Man United, we're exactly where we deserve to be, because I don't believe our players are good enough. This Tottenham team, I wish we had some of their players.
Well, 22 defeats they had in the Premier League. That's the most defeats a side has had and not been relegated. So made a bit of history there, Spurs. But so it sounds as though you're thinking that maybe Ange Postecoglou shouldn't be in charge going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to him. Like I said, credit where it's due. I don't like the fact that people are constantly linking managers to Tottenham when a manager's still there. That's not my favourite thing to do when people do that. I think, oh, like, he's still there and he's probably thinking, I've just won a trophy. First time in 18 years, let me enjoy it. Because after the game in the press conference, that was the only thing being asked. Do you think you'll be here next year? You know what Daniel Levy's like? He doesn't hang about, does he? He doesn't care.
Not really.
He fired Mourinho 2 days before a final. And Mourinho's a serial winner. Regardless of whether I like Mourinho or whether he's not the same as he used to be, he does win things. And he knows how to get things done. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Ange will be there next year. But when is it gonna be announced? It's either he's staying. Yeah. It needs to either be announced that he's staying or announced that he's going, because these questions will keep coming.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the time of this recording, we've got an early transfer window that's just opened. It will close in a few days' time. This to help out the Club World Cup clubs. But you're right. A manager coming in wants to start bringing their new players in as soon as they're in that door, if a new manager comes in. Likewise, Ange Postecoglou, if he's staying, he wants to bring in players. So you need a decision sooner rather than later. But what we do know is Ruben Amorim will be in charge for Manchester United for next season. Oh, do you think this is going to be a really important summer for Manchester United and players they recruit?
Yeah, I mean, not only recruiting, but Bruno Fernandes. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that he's turned down the offer to go to Saudi, but I don't think, and fair play to him, because I don't think many people would turn down 700 grand a week. And I think from what he sees, though, it's almost one of those things where, I mean, Bruno's 30 now, right? And it's like, if he was to go over there, players do get forgotten about when they go over there. So it's like, you know, John Duran, Ivan Toney, even I mean, no one forgets about Cristiano, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like players just go over there and people kind of forget about them. And I think Bruno still has a lot to offer. But the fact that we're in a position where some Man United fans are saying, oh, you know, let's sell Bruno for 100 million and get 4 or 5 players in. I tweeted it the other day. I said, what day and age are you getting in for 20 million? Who are you getting? Because you ain't getting no one.
No,
for 20 million. Anymore. I mean, Kelleher going to Brentford for 12 and a half. I mean, I'm sure you're buzzing about that, but like 12 and a half million, like that is, I mean, I know he's never going to come to Man United because he's Liverpool, but what like unbelievable signing. He's a brilliant goalkeeper, and that's the type of business that is good business. And Man United have been doing poor business for 10 or 15 years, and it's coming back to bite us now because, you know, Kobe Mainoo, Garnacho, like, at this point, I'm like, I don't want Kobe to go, but I'm like, Garnacho, as much as I've Garnacho on the back of my shirt, like, I'm like, it's time, because it's just, I'm seeing players on their pre-season tour, you know, sticking fingers up to the fans, you know, and all those types of things. And David Beckham alluded to it. Like, this isn't Man United Football Club. Like, those types of things. Like, I know we all have a breaking point. And then Garnacho, after games and interviews, talking about, we've all been there. I want to play every minute of every game. But you can't come and speak about how great you are. So, I just think the club has become really toxic. And I think Ruben, I like Ruben. I do believe he's the right person. But I sound like a stuck record. Right manager, wrong time. Give him the money that Eric Ten Hag was given. We can't because of PSR. But at the same time, like, if he had that budget, I believe we'd be in a far better place. But with these players, like, Natalie, honestly, like, I would get rid of about 70-80% of them. And I've said it for years. I've been saying it for years.
Well, it does feel as though it's losing its soul, Manchester United, which is, you know, just from a football perspective is not what we want, because in a way, as much as rival fans might be loving the demise of Manchester United, having a competitive Manchester United side is only a benefit to the Premier League. So just finally then, what would be the minimum you would expect from Ruben Amorim and Manchester United for next season?
Well, the business we've been doing now with Cunha, I'll welcome that. And Buemo, maybe you wouldn't welcome that.
No.
But like for 50 mil, I'm taking that. So these types of things, but in addition to keeping Bruno, you know, but also getting rid of players that are not good enough. I'd rather players like Harry Amas and Toby Collier play than have players that like are not good enough. You know, for whatever reason, like that's what I want to see. I know some people have questioned Ruben's tactics. I only really questioned them against Lyon and in the final because some of the team selection, like Agate being left on the bench, can't get my head around that. We all make different decisions. I'm not a manager. Garnacho being on the bench didn't make sense to me either. You know, and Bruno playing deeper in the six didn't make sense. Clearly, he's our best player, needs to be higher. So those types of tactical things, I think, have come back to bite Ruben a little bit. But I think give him more time. But if Man United are still in this place next year with these same players, it's definition of insanity.
Well, Lianne, it's always a joy to chat to you. We could chat all afternoon, all day, I can imagine. There's so many things we could have spoken about. But listen, we always appreciate you joining us on this Sporting Planet. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Natalie, for having me.